Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the 155th episode of Hawkblogger Mornings. I am Brian Emhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawkblogger. And for those wondering, well, they probably aren't wondering, but if you're wondering why we're not up on Twitter today, changed my profile pic. It means it's going to be a few days before they verify everything, make sure it's still me. So it's a YouTube only week, pretty much. I think if you're over at Facebook or at Instagram, you can also catch the show until they verify that this mug is still my mug. So we've got some stuff to cover today. Apologies for being a little bit late. Not that you guys need every detail, but I've definitely come down with something. So did not get a lot of sleep last night. Trying to get over whatever I've got. Someone in the press box. I blame somebody in the press box, but definitely going to plow through, make sure we get the show in. I also, assuming fingers crossed, assuming that things work out, going to have a interview for you later today. Fun conversation with Pharaoh Brown, the tight end for the Seahawks. His first conversation since leaving the practice field in Tennessee. Looking forward to getting to know Pharaoh a little bit. There is some schedule challenges, so we'll see if it works out, but we will definitely talk to Pharaoh at some point. The idea is hopefully around 11:15 or so, I'll be able to talk to Pharaoh Brown. It may or may not be live. We'll have to figure out depending on how that goes, but keep an eye out either way. The best way to get all the player interviews right away is to be a club level or higher member on YouTube. That'll get you access to all of my player interviews immediately. Everybody else has to wait. So that is a great incentive to be a club level member or higher on YouTube. And we've got hundreds. I think we're getting closer and closer to 1,000 YouTube members. And for people that were at the chat party on Saturday, you can see why membership has its privileges, because there were so many spam bots in there, man. We're going to probably have to go to a member only chat for our live game day conversations. But yeah, that was that. This episode, by the way, like all episodes, is brought to you by ftnfantasy.com. The best place to get your fantasy news, info, stats, help you with drafts. If you haven't already, they've got cheat sheets for all this. They've got Discord channels where you can ask questions. And then throughout the season, you will be able to get all the information you need to make your lineup discussions and changes. And also, if you are a person who does sports betting, they got a ton of information up there. And we are going to have Mike Randall on the show every week. So tomorrow, Mike Randall will be back on with us, talking fantasy football, talking week one matchups, a bunch of stuff. And people that are in our patreon.com/hawkblogger Slack channel get to ask Mike questions. I also post that in the YouTube community. So YouTube, I think club level members and higher get to ask Mike questions as well. So promo code Hawks gets you 15% off, less than $8 a month. You will not regret it. And I pinned the link in the chat for you to be able to get access to that. All right, folks. So we have got news. We've got news to talk to. I woke up bleary-eyed, headache, and turned my phone over and saw the Seahawks have made a trade. The Seattle Seahawks have made a trade. According to Ian Rappaport and a number of other folks, the Seahawks have acquired Trevis Gipson, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that first name correctly, but Gipson comes from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was drafted by the Chicago Bears in 2020 as a 5th round pick. And on first blush, let's just kind of look at this for a second. I'm seeing Ryan is telling me that it is Trevis. I'll go with Trevis. I trust Ryan. And Trevis is an edge rusher. He had 7 sacks a couple years ago with the Chicago Bears. He was with the Bears for the first 3 years of his career, then ended up with Jacksonville. And just taking that at its face value, the implications there are the Seahawks just traded away an edge player for a late round pick, and then they just acquired a edge player for a late round pick. And so either Gipson was an edge player that they preferred to have on the roster and that they actually planned to keep 5 edge players. And so this was essentially a 3-team trade where the Seahawks traded Darrell Taylor for Trevis Gipson. Or, and by the way, this is my best guess, or the Uchenna Nwosu injury is a little more serious than any of us want it to be. So let's talk about that first. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how the IR rule works first. Unlike previous years, or unlike the old days, if a player is placed on IR on the day of cutdowns, which is tomorrow, they can place up to 2 players on IR on the day of cutdowns. That does not mean that they are out for the year. It used to be if you put someone on IR before the season began, they were out for the year. But if you place 2 players on the day of cutdowns, then both players are eligible to return after 4 games. So it's not 6 games, it's not 8 games, it's 4 games. And so the implication there would be if the Seahawks feel like Uchenna Nwosu is not going to be ready for the beginning of the season, it might even be if they don't think he's going to be ready for the first few weeks, it would make some sense for them to consider putting him on IR and saving a roster spot for someone else. Now, you could say, well, they had Jamie Sheriff, who had a stellar preseason, bring him up, have him take the spot, or Nelson Caesar, is another guy that they could bring up. But I don't think the Seahawks feel like either of those guys are ready to play meaningful snaps in the NFL quite yet. I think they see them as developmental players. I think they see them as guys they probably would like to have on the practice squad. And so you acquire a veteran. Now, Gipson is 27 years old. It's not like this is a 35-year-old end of his career kind of guy. Like I said, he had 7 sacks a couple years ago. He had his career high in pressures actually came in 2022 with the Bears. He had 30 pressures in 2022. But his pass rush grade in 2021 was an 87. So it's a very high grade for pass rushing. It's a very high grade for anything. Just curious where Darrell Taylor's best pass rush grade for a season was. I don't think it was close to that. I think it was in the 70s. Darrell Taylor's career high pass rush grade was 74, and that was in 2022. That was with 287 pass rush snaps. Trevis Gipson, when he had the 87 pass rush grade was 229. So roughly equivalent in terms of number of snaps. It wasn't like he did it on a very low snap count. Last year with the Tennessee Titans, Gipson played only a handful, played 76 snaps. He had an 89 pass rush grade for that period of time. So he has flashed some high-end pass rush. This is not a guy that for sure would have been available on waivers. And in fact, let's do a little bit of snooping. Let's do a little bit of snooping on what people thought before this trade happened. Let's look at the ESPN projection, and they had Trevis Gipson on the roster. So it did look like he was going to make it from an ESPN perspective. Let's look at another projection. I like to look at these because it gives you an idea of whether this guy was going to be cut or whether the Seahawks had to really ante up something in order to get this one. Also had Trevis Gipson being one of the players that makes it. So the implication there is this is not a guy that the Jaguars were going to give up. So the Seahawks likely had to, they had a meaningful amount of motivation for that to happen, for that move to get made. That adds to the credence that this situation with Nwosu likely is going to be a little bit of time. I'm not going to go to this is a season-ending thing. I'm not going to go to any of that. But the likelihood, I mean, I was pretty optimistic based on what I saw, as was Brady Henderson based on what he saw. I mean, Nwosu was on the sidelines in that game after the injury. He was sitting there with a wrap on his leg. He was talking with other guys. I didn't see any brace being put on his leg. I don't know anyone that's had like an ACL, for example, that's just sat on the sidelines afterwards. I don't know anyone that's had an ACL that didn't get some sort of brace put on their leg after the injury. I don't know anyone that's had an ACL that then walked off the field, from the sidelines. So that doesn't mean it's not that, but I still am would be surprised if it's something that serious. But there are some, Twitter doc kind of people that are guessing it might be an MCL sprain. Don't know if that's right or wrong, and I get a little annoyed with that kind of conjecture. But if that's right, then that would line up a little bit with an IR stint. And I just think that we should be bracing for it, folks, because this move, to me, the timing of it, the person that they targeted who was going to be on a roster, the fact that they had to trade a pick, it indicates that they wanted somebody that they could roll with sooner rather than later. And that just, to me, the most likely implication here is that the Uchenna Nwosu injury might be a little bit more serious than we hoped. Hopefully it's not too serious, and we'll find out soon. I wouldn't be surprised if word comes out later today about what this is. One of the national guys will probably get it, and we'll find out what the deal is. But a little bit more about Trevis Gipson. He has been a below average run defender. So he is 6'4", 263. His run defense grade last year for Tennessee was fine. It was 66.3, but the rest of his grades were 39.7, 50.8, 40.6. Darrell Taylor, as we know, had trouble there. He was a 45, 40, 47. And the thing is, I hear a lot of people already wringing their hands. I'd rather have Darrell Taylor. I'd rather have Darrell. You can't live life backwards like that. The Seahawks made a move that they thought was the right move, not only now but for the future with moving on Darrell Taylor. Whatever you think about him on the field, his future with this team past this year was quite low. The likelihood was low that he was going to be part of it. They had 4 healthy, high-performing edge rushers going into that game, and they made a move to get, the best deal that they could ahead of the weekend. Now, maybe part of the reason, like you could say, hey, why didn't you just wait till after the game to have the most possible information? And I could see that. But they might have felt like they got the best deal they were going to get at that point, and why wait? Why wait? So, I think there was a decent chance they did not want Darrell Taylor on this team, regardless of what anyone else thinks. I know there's people out there that are like Darrell Taylor truthers. I haven't been negative about him as I've been probably neutral, generally speaking, about Darrell Taylor. But I think these folks that are wringing their hands about Darrell Taylor, it's like wringing your hands about Cody Barton. Honestly, it's even like wringing your hands. It's not even like wringing your hands with Quandre Diggs, but I don't think Darrell Taylor was ever going to be the difference, whether he's here or not, between the Seahawks winning and losing. I just don't think that's who he was. I also don't believe that Darrell Taylor was a guy that was necessarily going to be part of what Mike Macdonald wants to build here. And so I think that the team made the move that they made, and they were probably going to make it no matter what. And that's part of how the calculus was arrived at to move him even before the final preseason game. So I am not losing. I'm not, there's zero part of me that's like, oh my gosh, I wish they just didn't get rid of Darrell Taylor. Like that was a move. That's the past. It's been done, and it was probably going to be done no matter what. Now, Gipson comes in here, and, I don't know him. I'll be straight. I don't know him. I haven't watched him play. I haven't watched his game enough. I don't know what kind of player he is. I do know that the Seahawks chose him. Like, they went and said, this is the guy I want, and we want him enough that we're going to give up draft capital to get him. I'm already more interested in that player and how he fits in the roster than I am in a player that they clearly did not want to be on the roster. So, not everybody will feel that way, but that's kind of how I read it. And when I look at, what the implications are for cutdown day tomorrow, I'm guessing this is going to be something where I don't know this. This is not a report. This is just me totally guessing. I'm guessing we're going to hear that Uchenna Nwosu will be put on IR. That's my guess. I'm guessing he won't be out that long. 4 weeks is the minimum. And I'm guessing that they will still only keep 4 edge players on the roster, and that they will expose Jamie Sheriff and Nelson Caesar to waivers and hope that they can re-sign them. That's my guess. Now, we'll see. We'll see. That's my, if that's true. If that's true, let's go through again what that will mean for the Seahawks' first part of the schedule. The Seahawks play the Denver Broncos at home, week 1, New England away, week 2, Miami at home, week 3, and Detroit on the road in week 4. So those would be the 4 games. And this is just all assumptions built on assumptions, but I think this is the news of the day. So let's talk about it. I think that if Uchenna Nwosu were to miss those 4 games, I don't know that it really makes a huge difference against Denver or against New England. I do think it starts to show up against Miami, who's an excellent rushing team, especially around the edge, and Detroit. Like, those 2 games, there is no doubt that your win probability is affected if Uchenna Nwosu is not available for those. And that's without knowing Trevis Gipson. I do not expect him to be anywhere near the player that Uchenna Nwosu is, but don't know what he's going to add, so I can't speak to that. What I would assume would happen if we just look at depth chart. If we just look at the depth chart for the Seahawks, let me see what they've got published currently. I just want to make sure I'm following. Yeah, so what you've got at defensive end is Draymond Jones, Boye Mafe, and Derek Hall. And Derek Hall is the guy that I think is listed as the backup Sam linebacker behind Uchenna Nwosu. And so I think you're talking about Derek Hall getting a lot more reps. Derek Hall happens to be the guy that had one of the biggest breakout preseasons and training camps. Derek Hall happens to be a guy who I think is ready to be an excellent run defender and step up as a pass rusher. He is the guy that maybe out of all those guys has the potential to have the biggest breakout season. So thank goodness for that. And what this also probably means is you're talking about, okay, so who is the backup to Derek Hall if he's the one that's going to be a starter for those games? And I assume that's going to be Trevis Gipson. If not Trevis Gipson, the other thing to kind of think about is, do they utilize, Boye Mafe over there? I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibilities. I think Draymond Jones is a different kind of player, so I think he's listed as, quote, the rush end. I still think that he is going to, be a starter for you and will be opposite of probably Derek Hall. Mafe, I think, could play Sam, and I think he has played that kind of role before. Let's play this game for a second. And I don't know this. Again, I'm just speculating wildly, but let's say that you decide that you want Boye Mafe to be rotating with Derek Hall at the Sam linebacker spot. If that's the case, then one of the things this could mean is that Mike Morris becomes the rotating player with Draymond Jones, because Mike Morris played a lot on the end in preseason. He has done that in Mike McDonald's defense before. I think he's got the athletic ability to do it. He'd be a different kind of end than Mafe, for sure. They're different players, but I do believe that they could move Mike Morris over there and roll with that. So I think that in the, quote, fortunate category here, if there's fortune to be had, it's that there's some quality depth, and there's a guy in Derek Hall who is thirsty for reps and I think is going to flourish should he get those reps. So I don't think the sky is falling. I don't even know. We could find out in a few hours that none of this is none of this. This could be they're keeping 5 edge rushers. They just wanted Darrell Taylor out and they wanted Gipson in. It could be that. It absolutely could. And for folks that want to hold on to that as a belief or an expectation, I got no problems with you feeling that way. No problems at all. But assuming that my guess is right, then I don't think the sky is falling. I think that we're going to learn a little bit about some different players at different positions. I think that it's going to affect a little bit about how Mike McDonald calls certain things. But this is why you brought him in to be your head coach, because he understands how to accentuate the talents and strengths of the different players on your defense. And this is a guy that will adjust. He will adjust within games. He will adjust within between weeks. He will learn about players, and we'll go from there. So yeah, that is kind of the big news with the Seahawks acquiring Trevis Gipson, and the best guess implications of what that means for Uchenna Nwosu. We have not yet seen any moves related to cornerback. And the Artie Burns thing sure looked more negative than the Uchenna Nwosu news. It was Artie Burns who was carted off the sideline. It was a non-contact injury. And so I've been braced since I saw that for that to be a season ender. I don't know. Again, not reporting anything. This is just me telling you as a fan how I'm kind of bracing for things. And the interesting part there is if the Seahawks felt that they had edge players that they were comfortable just giving more reps to in the wake of an edge injury, then they wouldn't have made a trade. They would have elevated somebody. From a cornerback position, if Burns is out and we do not see a corresponding move, then the implication would be that they're comfortable elevating somebody within the depth that they've got. I'm not. I'll just tell you, like, I do not like what I've seen from Nehemiah Pritchett. He's also not a slot corner. I'm not comfortable with what I've seen from DJ James. He can play slot, but I don't think he's ready. I like Lance Boykin. I actually think he's an interesting and ready to play corner. I don't think he's ready to be an elite corner, but I think he's ready to play. But he's an edge corner. He's not a nickel corner. So let's just play that game for a second. If they are comfortable with who they've got on the roster, then maybe they elevate Lance Boykin, who's also a very good special teams player, and he makes the 53. Well, what they've been running a lot has been Artie Burns at nickel and Devin Witherspoon outside. I think they feel like that was their best configuration in some ways. So what this could mean is back to Trey Brown being, outside and Witherspoon being inside. That has been their they played that quite a bit. So I don't think that's a negative thing for the starters. I think it's more a question of for depth. If you want anyone else playing nickel other than Devin Witherspoon, they haven't played Trey Brown there. So even though it's interesting, Trey Brown, I talked to him about this when Trey was on our show, that all the draft analysts had Trey Brown as purely a nickel corner, only a nickel corner. All he's ever played in the NFL is edge, is outside boundary corner. So I will at least bring it up that they could look to if Burns is out for the year, they could, say, hey, Trey, we're going to ask you to double up as nickel. I think that more likely, they kind of look at the roster, more likely you could see someone like Kobe Bryant be asked to slide over there. In a fascinating one that I'll just bring up, but I don't think because we haven't seen it. Remember that when Marquise Blair last played for the Seahawks, it was as a nickel corner. He's only been playing safety, so I haven't seen him take any snaps there. But could they decide that they want to see if he can? I still think he'd be on a practice squad. I don't think they'd make him on the 53. But could they start to work him in at nickel to see if he could be an option for them a little bit later in the season? So I do think they have some options at nickel on the roster. If they make a move, I would be surprised if it's for, if they actually trade for somebody. Maybe they do. Maybe it's a conditional 7th or something like that, like they've done in the past for guys like what was his name? Justin. My goodness, I got to look it up now. There were a number of players that the Seahawks picked up on their roster late in the years to be nickel cornerbacks. I'm just now obsessed with making sure I look back at these. Who was it? Help me out. Yeah, Justin Coleman. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. So yeah, they've made trades like that before. I don't know. I mean, my guess is they would maybe scour the waiver wires or the practice squad stuff, but I believe that they kind of like the depth they've got at corner, and they'd probably stick with who they have instead of pushing someone off the roster. As far as Rayshon Jenkins goes, I think that with Jenkins, you know, I didn't see the injury in practice, so I can't really speak to it. I didn't even see him going off the field. But Brady Henderson has talked about it, that he did need some help. He was limping, but at the game, he was on the sideline, walking around, apparently without a limp. And according to Brady, not from what he could see, not wearing a boot or anything like that. So my best guess is the Jenkins thing may not be that serious. And so that is that's the current guess. That's the current guess. I see people in chat talking about that there's a new trade. There's not a new trade. I spent the whole first half an hour talking about Trevis Gipson. So it's not a new trade. I just went to check to make sure there's nothing new. There is a tweet from Brady Henderson saying that it is not a conditional pick. It's a 6th round pick. And Brady Henderson said this move is likely tied to Uchenna Nwosu hurting his knee on Saturday. So Brady has the same read I do, that this likely is related to the Uchenna Nwosu piece. That is new news, that it is a 6th round pick and that it is not conditional. So if that's the case, then the implications are that this is essentially trading Darrell Taylor for Trevis Gipson. And what this means, if Nwosu goes on IR the way I'm guessing it sounds like he probably will, I don't know, this is just a guess, then what we don't know is what happens after 4 weeks. Would they keep 5 edge rushers? Would they try to trade Gipson somewhere else and maybe recoup a draft pick later on? Would they just cut him? I don't know. I mean, those are questions we'll find out. They don't have to make that decision now, but we will find out in the coming couple of days. Good time to remind folks, if you haven't already, really consider signing up over at ftnfantasy.com. Promo code Hawks. The link is pinned to chat, and that will get you 15% off, under $8 a month, and will get you all the fantasy football info you need as well. If you're into sports betting, it's got info there as well. But for me, the reason I'm a subscriber is the DVOA data, the Stats Hub data that I just continue to find great insights from. And if you ever were a Football Outsiders person that read Football Outsiders from Aaron Schatz, all that data has moved to FTN Fantasy. So really happy to partner with them this year. Head on over to ftnfantasy.com and sign up with promo code Hawks. Less than $8 a month gets you in the door. This is stuff that honestly, the only way you get this kind of data is spend thousands, $5,000 or $6,000 a year over at SIS. You can get that for under $8 a month at FTN Fantasy if you use promo code Hawks. So do it. You will not regret it. So yeah, I think that's kind of the high level news of the day. I think we now are kind of in mode where we will look for Whether the Seahawks will wait until Tuesday, you see other teams already announcing some of their cuts. Not every team is going to wait all the way until Tuesday to do that. The Seahawks have tended to, in the past, be the latest to announce their cuts possible. So if that's the case, when do cuts have to be announced? I think it's 1 p.m. tomorrow. Cuts happen at 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, August 27th. So as I'm looking right now, I want to see which teams have announced their cut. The Falcons have announced their cuts, or at least a number of their cuts. And so some teams are doing them in waves. It's kind of interesting. The Bills have announced a number of cuts. The Panthers have announced some cuts. The Panthers cut Lamar Jackson. Can you believe it? He's a cornerback. Sorry. He's even a cornerback to make it even more confusing. But he's not a quarterback. The Bears have announced a few cuts. The Bengals have announced, looks like, a lot of their cuts. Interesting. Wait, Andre Carter. No, that's a different Andre Carter that they cut. Never mind. The Browns have announced a couple of cuts. The Cowboys have. The Broncos have announced one. The Lions have announced a couple. Packers have announced a few. The Colts have announced a number of cuts. And I think they just cut Levi Bell as well. Good reminder of how preseason heroes are not necessarily the next great thing. Reminder for me, who is a big Levi Bell fan. Jaguars, as we talked about, have announced a number of cuts already. The Chiefs have made some cuts. The Raiders, the Chargers, the Rams have made most of their cuts, I think. Dolphins have made some cuts. And the Vikings have. The Giants have, it looks like they've announced most of their cuts. I'm scanning through these just to see if there's any interesting names for Seattle. The Steelers have announced a number of their cuts. Well, this page is saying that the Seahawks have cut Devin Richardson and Willie Roberts. This might be a little bit out of date because those guys have been cut and Roberts was re-signed. So take that for what it's worth. But we will find out a little bit more by 1 o'clock tomorrow who the Seahawks cut. As far as news, like I will not be. There's no practice today. There's no media availability. Well, there might be practice today. There's no media availability. So there's no press conference. Tomorrow there will be certain players available in the afternoon. It's a later in the day practice. Wednesday, we will have a chance to talk to GM John Schneider. I see a question from Hawks fan Matt Man. Yes, I'm talking about 1 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow is the cuts. And then there is a conversation with Mike McDonald on Thursday. So we are not scheduled to talk to Mike McDonald until Thursday. That's normally when we hear about injuries. So it's possible John Schneider might reveal a little bit, but we're going to kind of be in a wait and see mode until then, and want to just, let folks know we might not get new information until then, other than what we find out through leaks to the press, leaks to national folks mostly. I do see Ransom Cornwall, which is an interesting name. Thanks to whoever gifted me a membership. Love this community, and Brian, keep pumping out the great content. Well, Ransom, thank you for coming on and welcome to the crew. Reminder, folks, if you want to receive a free membership, a gifted membership, you have to have gifting turned on your profile on YouTube. And to do that, you got to go, you actually have to click join, I think. And then there's 3 dots and you want to click on that menu and enable gifting. So make sure that you got gifting enabled in order to be able to receive a free membership. If you do get a free membership, really think about paying it forward. Part of the kind of ethos of this community is that we take care of one another. We grow. We are a friendly, fun, passionate crew. And part of the way that we do that is we bring more passionate, fun people in. And if you get something, give something. So there's a few different ways to do that. You could gift memberships yourself to other people. You could re-up your membership when this 1 month ends. Stay part of the community. Stay supportive of what we're trying to build here. And that makes a big difference in the types of things that we do. I'll be really specific with you all. I mean, I'm going to the Patriots game because of all of you. Primarily, I wouldn't say primarily, but a big, huge assist for detail oriented really helped make it happen. I'm going to go because I can make financial sense to spend the money. There is no ESPN behind me. There is no 710. There's no KJ. There's no Seattle Times. There's no one to pay for my travel. So I'm paying for the flight. I'm paying for the food. I'm paying for the car. I'm paying for the hotel, all that stuff. And for that to make any financial sense, there has to be a certain amount of support that I get from the community. And so we hit my goal that I set to go to New England. I'd like to go to Detroit a couple weeks later. It's not cheap to do that. So having folks sign up over at patreon.com/hawkblogger helps. Having people sign up as subscribers on YouTube helps. And if there's folks, I'm also working on sponsorships. The FTN sponsorship helps. These are things that really help. I'm working on another sponsorship that I think you guys will love. Hopefully we can finalize some things and want to give you guys the best possible experience. Another example of this is, getting the audio right, man. I think the levels have been off and it's been bugging me. So, thanks to one of the listeners has been helping me find the right equipment. I've got some more cabling coming that's better. But this is all stuff that we're trying to do in order to really improve the content I can provide for all of you and the experience of tuning in. So really, really appreciate all of you and the support that you give. I appreciate all the support, even if it's just listening, liking, subscribing, all that kind of stuff. We're at like almost 11.6 thousand subscribers. Would love to get to 12,000 before the season. I think it would be good luck, but that's just me. The 12 number means something. So let's get as many folks. Headed to subscribe as possible. All right. So I got a question here from Demi Virus. Brian, will you be going to press conferences at VMAC during the regular season? Yeah, that's the idea. And still working that out with Seahawks PR. Let me share a little bit about that for you guys. I think folks are invested and interested. So hopefully I'll just keep this relatively brief, but it is very abnormal, maybe to the point where I might be the only person for a quote fan site to have credentials to an NFL team. And it is something that Dave Pearson and the PR crew are taking a chance on letting me in there, taking a chance that, the quality coverage I'm going to provide is of the level of other professionals who do it, and that I'm going to conduct myself as a professional when he let me into the press box, for the preseason game, when he is going to have to vouch for me on road trips, and that to other clubs that I'm someone that they can trust to have in the press box to conduct myself the right way. And so it's an experiment. And at any point it could end. And I totally understand that. And I appreciate the kind of the trust that Dave and crew are showing in me. I have a ton of respect for how I've learned so much about how they do their jobs and the different things that they have to do. But, it's been, I think, mutually beneficial so far, and I expect it to stay that way. My goal, I'm not going to be like other beat writers. I'm not a classic like beat writer. That's not what I'm doing. And I think that you guys get that. What I'm trying to provide is more access that provides more analysis, and also a little bit more of a chance to get to know the people that are on your team. And so like my goals primarily when I'm talking to somebody, whether it's in a press conference or in an interview, is one, can I help us get to know this person as a person? Like, can we learn something about who this person is? Two, can this person help us learn something about football, about the team, about how the game's played? And three, it's to see if they can say something to help get us more excited. Like, I'm not looking for the hot take. I'm not looking for breaking news. I'm not looking for any of that. Other people can do that. They can chase it. It's not my lifestyle that I want, and it's not the relationship I want, because if you're into breaking news, then you're actually working against the team, because the team would like to control the news that comes out. Like today, I am speculating. I'm not reporting anything. I don't have news to report. That's fine. But I'm not going to be trying to be the person that beats Adam Schefter to some story. So that's the kind of content I want to be able to provide. I want to provide deeper, more reflective analysis about this team. And I've got some conversations with some guests that I'm hoping to bring aboard. By the way, great guests are also not free. I've got a lot of great friends that have done, come on this show at no cost. But it's a lot to ask, especially during the season, to have some of these professional folks be on a regular basis. I would like to bring some folks on that I have a ton of respect for. I've had some conversations, and that costs money as well. So for what it's worth, I'm trying to invest as much in the show, maybe more in the show than I'm taking out of it, while also doing the charity stuff. So all this goes back to just saying I really appreciate all the support you guys have given, and really love all that. So, all right. So Daysum says, no wild pirate themed stripper parties in the press rooms. Got it. Laugh my A off. No, the press room. Is anybody curious about that? I mean, I'm thinking about writing a story about it, because I've never been in a press box. People had offered to take me in before. I just didn't care, to be totally honest, but it was an interesting experience. First of all, it's massive. It's so much bigger than I would have expected. It's like the size of, if you've ever been in a suite or seen a suite, it's probably like 10 suites lined up, lengthwise. It's very long. When you first walk in, you've got the visiting team's press, and then on the farther side, closer to like the midfield, is the Seahawks press. You've got the Seahawks PR and Seahawks staff that are kind of, there's these multiple tiers. Like, it's almost like, you've got these rows, and they have tables and like power for your laptop and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of stadium seating a little bit in terms of the tiers. So you can see over the people in front of you. And the first row is like right up against the window of the press box. And so that's for, as far as I can tell, that's for like the quality reporters, the folks that have been there that have the most cred. So that's where Brady sits, and, Bob Condata sits. Bob has I think the most senior spot farthest over to midfield. Mike Dugar sits down there, Tim Booth. So all these folks that do this for a living and have done it for a long time. Then from there, there's a couple more rows and a couple more folks. And behind all these rows, there is a barista who's serving, coffee and stuff like that. There's a little, cooler, fridge where there's soda and drinks. But then across the hall, there's like a cafeteria almost. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's for stadium workers and press only. You have to badge in, and there's like a buffet of food, and this is good food. I mean, it was like they had some fancy chicken and fancy like sliced corned beef, like brisket. They had a broccoli and bacon salad that I didn't know I needed in my life, but man, it was really good. And, you know, fresh vegetables, and then they had like desserts over on the side. And then it's almost like a sports bar. It's huge. Like there's this big kind of cafeteria area for seating, and they've got a full wall of TVs that were tuned to NFL Network, that were showing preseason games. So you just sit in there, eat, and watch games. It was pretty cool. I mean, I got to say, I've already made the decision, and I've told them I do not want to be in the press box for home games this year. I plan on sitting in my seats. I'm a fan. I want to scream. I want to be involved. I also want to drink before the games. I want to be with my friends. That's just part of my experience, and it's part of what keeps my passion for this going. I don't want to divorce myself from the team. But I got to admit, it was like, oh, this is a pretty interesting way to watch and pretty fun. I can imagine wanting to do this. And so I will hopefully be doing that on the road and looking forward to that. But, you know, it was cool. It was a cool experience. And, you know, I'll share more from behind the scenes. I'd like to interview some of the folks behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys will be interested, but the amount of people that have to do their jobs just to bring us this game is actually like remarkable. It's wild how much operational stuff at practices and in games has to happen. And so I'm interested in those things. You might hear about them. You might not be interested, but you'll probably hear about them. A couple other chats here I'll put up there. Michael Harder, one of our members, says, I think of you as you work for us and do it well. Well, I appreciate that you think I do it well. I will say, I don't think I've worked for you guys. I love you guys. I'm so happy to have this community. I do this because I want to do it. And if I didn't, I wouldn't. And so if I worked for you, you guys could fire me, but you can't. So I'm going to keep doing this as much as I want to do it when I want to do it, and not do it when I don't. And I think that that's good. I think that's actually good for you guys, and it's good for me, because one of the differences between me and maybe some of the beat writers or the people that are doing this as a job, because I had a job that I had to do, or like was paid to do for a long time, that if I wasn't getting paid, I probably wouldn't do. But the difference between myself and the folks that are doing this as a job is I'm a fan. I'm a passionate fan. I do this because I'm obsessed with it. I care deeply about it, whether that makes any sense or not. I do. And I think that leads to different questions. I think that leads to different amount of reflection. When I couldn't sleep last night because I was sick, I had my phone and I was writing down questions, coming up with questions for John Schneider. I was coming up with questions. The next ones, I have a running list for Mike McDonald. Next questions I want to ask. I came up with a question that I wanted to ask DK Metcalf next time we get a chance to talk to him. I don't know that the other guys aren't doing that, but this is just something where I hope that I'm asking different things. I'm giving different perspectives, talking to different people, having different conversations, and giving a broader, kind of broadening the coverage of the Seahawks, and hopefully deepening it as well. Here's a question from Old Fish Guy, a member. How was your visit with Ray Roberts? Man, that was so cool. That was so cool. So I'm sitting there in the press box. I do not have the best seat, as I shouldn't. I mean, for sure. It was a fantastic seat. I know it's better than the seats I get that I pay for, but, you know, I'm not in the senior most position or anything like that. And so all of a sudden I feel a hand on my shoulder and look over, and it's Ray Roberts. And he's like, dude, bro, I did not recognize you without your hat on. I only see you with your hats because, you know, I try to be a little professional, pull the hat off. And, you know, I've got the bald, you know, shaved head. And she said, I didn't recognize you. Well, he came down and sat down on the stair next to me. Of course, when Ray sits on a stair and I'm in a seat, there's like the only time in my life I'm going to be above Ray Roberts. But even then, it wasn't that close. Anyway, so Ray and I just chopped it up for 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever it was. We went through every player on the roster. He told me some things that he heard in the production meeting. I told him things that I was seeing and hearing, all of it off the record, and all of it will stay off the record. But, we talked about old players on the Seahawks, talked about his experience. We talked about what it means when certain guys do certain things. It was a fantastic conversation. This is a guy that I literally had his football card on my door growing up. So like I had Tommy Kane, football card. I had Brian Blades. I had Dave Craig, Kurt Warner, that whole crew. Grant Fiesel. Like I know all those guys as players, and now, sitting here talking to him as a friend, and really, really appreciative of getting to know Ray better. And I think he's just an amazing person, and we're going to see what we can do about making him a regular on this show. So appreciate that. DKJ say, always jealous of Grant Cohen. Now we have Brian. I see a couple people make this point. There might be some similarities in terms of how often we go live, because Grant, honestly, that's something I've noticed from Grant. He's like discovered that there's not enough, it's insatiable, the amount of content you can create with people wanting to consume it. That's probably where our similarities end. Although I think Grant's a pretty, he hides it behind hot takes, but he's a pretty astute observer of football and of the team. And so I do not aspire to be Grant, and I definitely don't think Grant aspires to be me, but I will probably, be similar to Grant in terms of the amount of content that I produce, but I will not be hot takey. I will not be adversarial intentionally with the team. That's not how I roll. I'm a harmonious guy. I have been at work. I have been in my life. That's just kind of how I am. So I'm not going to seek that kind of adversarial relationship. I will hopefully improve my shoe game so I don't get called out by players. We do have Ransom Cornwall. He did it, man. This is exactly what we want to see. He gets a gifted membership, and then he gifts memberships. I love that from you, Ransom. Thank you. This is a perfect example of why this community is amazing. Gifts 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Thank you so much for doing that. Really, really appreciate it. And that is just so cool to see. So this is a good one from Hawks fan Matt. Don't let them butter you up to the point where you don't ask tough questions. Yeah, this is certainly on my mind. My tagline for Hawk Blogger since I started it in 2007 was unflinching analysis of the Seahawks. And that was very intentional because I felt like I could feel press flinching, not wanting to ask tough questions, not wanting to say tough things. And that was part of the brand that for me, I was like, I'm going to tell you exactly how I see it. Well, I'm still going to tell you exactly how I see it. What does change, just truthfully, is you're building a relationship. You're not just, if you want to ask a hot take question and then never really get an insight from that person because they're going to be closed off to you, you can do that, but you probably only get one shot at it. And so there's a line. I don't want to ask tough questions for the sake of asking tough questions. I do want to ask important questions that maybe get us a little bit more information. And I'd like to ask them in a way that gives the person I'm asking some freedom to maneuver and not feel like they're hemmed in. I think that a poorly asked question, and I'll give myself an example. The question I asked to DK Metcalf, a lot of people were like, yeah, like ask him the tough question about like how he's going to handle, himself on the field and not hurt the team. I really didn't like the way I asked that question because the emphasis was in the wrong place and it put DK in a defensive posture. And then we didn't get an interesting answer. And then he closed off. That doesn't help anybody. And so I want to find ways to ask questions that get us new information and new insights from people. And that's actually like a little bit of work. It's a little bit of thought. It can't just be off the cuff. And there's a little bit of an art to it. So I'm still learning and practicing, but I can promise that I'm not going to just ask fluff questions all the time. That's just not who I am. I won't be interested in that. And you guys will help me keep me honest. If you think that the questions I'm asking are not getting to the next level, fine. But on the opposite end of that spectrum, I also will ask some questions that are intentionally framed in a way to let the player or the coach or the GM or whoever it is express some enthusiasm, share something that could get people excited. Normal reporters aren't going to do that. They don't care about whether it gets anyone excited. They're trying to get news to report. So I want to ask, when we get to the 49ers stuff, I want to talk about the rivalry. I want to talk about what messages that certain people can send to fans. I want to talk about different things that can get the fans going. You know, when I asked Mike McDonald after the game this weekend, like, do you feel like this team's ready? I knew where that was probably going to go, and I wanted him to have a chance to kind of say what he said, which is, yeah, I think we're where we want to be. So, yeah, interesting piece there. I am just flipping through here, and here's Ransom again. Paying it forward was the least I could do. I've watched Brian for years. While I don't agree with him on everything, I love spreading the Seahawks fandom. You know, I hear that from a lot of people. They don't agree with me on everything. If you agreed with me on everything, then I would be disappointed, because it would sound like I was saying nothing of interest. If I don't push, beyond the ordinary, and if I just have takes that everybody else has, and I have analysis and points of view that everyone else has, then what's the friggin' point? I'm not going to intentionally like try to be different for the sake of being different, but I'm going to have strong opinions. I always have, and I always will. And I do not expect everyone to agree with them. And I think that's totally fine. Let's see. I'm just scrolling through. I think those are some of the biggest questions that I saw there. I do want to give you guys one more push on ftnfantasy.com. The link is pinned in chat. Less than $8 a month if you use promo code HAWKS, which gets you 15% off. Will get you access to Stats Hub, cheat sheets for your fantasy drafts, Discord groups where you can ask fantasy questions. And then tomorrow, keep in mind, tomorrow we will be getting Mike Randall back on. For every Tuesday, we'll be doing fantasy football conversations. We'll be answering your questions. So if you go to patreon.com/hawkblogger, join there, get access to the Slack channel. There is every Monday today, there is a post that will get shared in the main channel where you can ask questions that I will then share with Mike Randall. So patreon.com/hawkblogger is a great way to support the show. I will also, as many times as possible, try to remember to do that for the YouTube community as well. As far as what's coming up, Wednesday night, I do want to make sure you all are aware. Wednesday night, 6 p.m. is the annual Real Hawk Talk prediction show. And we're doing something different this year. We're having every single person on staff attend this show. So that means Josh Cashman will be there, Evan Hill will be there, Jeff Simmons, Nathan Ernst, Derek Gebby, Dana O'Gorman, and hopefully Trayton Howell as well. All on the show, sharing predictions. I will MC. We will go through it. Not everyone's going to talk at once. It'll be a little chaotic, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you've got that on your list to look for. Again, tomorrow's Mike Randall. When the cuts happen, I'm pretty sure I will do some conversation, but do remember that I'm going to be at the VMAC tomorrow in the afternoon talking to some players. So it may not be until tomorrow night that I do a reaction pod to cuts and talk about that, but I think it's very likely I will do that as well. And a little bit on something I'm seeing in chat right now. I just want to say, I think it's totally fine for people to share a point of view. I'd ask that once you've said your piece, let's not keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Assume that people have heard you and, move on. So I would just ask folks to keep that in mind. I understand where it's coming from, but let's just keep the conversation going and not kind of repeat the same thing over and over again. All right, folks. A lot coming up. I'm going to probably be working on preview content for hawkblogger.com. So also keep an eye on hawkblogger.com as well. All right, folks, that is going to do it for episode 155, 155 straight days of fresh Seahawks content for you, of Hawkblogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. If you haven't gone over to Instagram and followed on Instagram, Hawkblogger on Instagram, please do. We're over 600 followers. Would love to get it to 1,000. Keep pushing that up. Like and subscribe the show if you haven't already, and appreciate that. You're going to want to click the bell to get notified, because you just don't know, like for tonight, tomorrow, whenever there's new news, when I might be jumping on again. All right, folks, until then, thanks for a great Monday morning. Great hanging out. We'll see you all soon.